Today is the day when we remember our fathers, our grandfathers, and the stories they tell us, the inspiration they have given us. Some of these men belong to what is referred to as the greatest generation, and these perhaps told stories of their own participation in the war. But there was one person who was present in every combat of World War II and Korea, present in every occupation and every operation of that time. He was the one who always got there first, the one who was everywhere. Everyone of a certain generation knew his face and name. And to the younger generation, well, this is for us a lesson in American history. I am, of course, referring to an enigmatic figure who left his mark everywhere in those years, in the form of a piece of graffiti, showing a cartoon of mischievous face and hands peering over a wall, with the caption, "Kilroy was here." Now, graffiti goes back a long time. You find it on the walls of ancient Egypt, Jerusalem, and Pompeii. Our friend Kilroy follows a long tradition, but none has ever been as well known, as omnipresent as that face and that declaration, "Kilroy was here." The familiar image emerged during the Second World War, appearing on military docks and ships already in 1939, and soon he could be seen at truck stops and restaurants and meeting rooms all over the world. It was something of a national joke. He seemed to be the soldier who traveled the world, scrawling the simple message that he had been there. This cartoon captured the imagination of soldiers everywhere who found it comforting to imagine that this super GI had already been in the difficult places they found themselves in, and perhaps was still there with them. It became a tradition for soldiers secretly to scrawl that cartoon face and those words as soon as they landed somewhere. "Kilroy was here." During the 40s, Kilroy was here. He was there. He was everywhere. It was amazing where his logo turned up. That piece of graffiti was found on the torch of the Statue of Liberty, on the underside of the Arc of Triumph in Paris, on the Marco Polo Bridge in China, on simple huts in Polynesia. Kilroy was here. The Air Force even put on contests to see if they could beat Kilroy to isolated and uninhabited places around the world. But there was seemingly no place you could go that Kilroy had not been to first. Who was Kilroy? No one knew. They only knew that he had been there. The graffiti was, of course, not written by one soldier, but by many thousands of GIs who found some welcome humor and perhaps some even more welcome comfort in the omnipresence of such a companion. Finally, after the war, in 1946, the radio program Speak to America sponsored a contest to find the original Kilroy. Almost 40 people came forward claiming to be he. But the real Kilroy, who had started it all, was proven to be one James Kilroy from Halifax, Massachusetts. During the war, he had worked at a shipyard where his job was to count the number of rivets completed. Riveters were paid by the rivet. So Kilroy would count a block of rivets and then with a piece of waxed chalk would put a little check mark there so that they wouldn't be counted twice. Well, not all Rosie the Riveters were honest. Sometimes when Kilroy's back was turned they would come and erase that little check mark so that the rivets would be counted a second time and they would be paid double. Before long, Mr. Kilroy caught on to their little trick, so he decided to write something bigger that would not be so easy to erase. He began writing in huge block letters, "Kilroy was here." Eventually, he began adding a cartoon of himself peering over the wall, looking at those riveters. A legend had been born. Now, ordinarily, the rivets and the chalk marks would have been then painted over. But this was wartime, and the ships were being sent out very quickly, so fast that there wasn't any time for that. So Kilroy's trademark inspection symbol was seen by the thousands of military personnel who boarded these ships. They had no idea who this mysterious Mr. Kilroy was. They only knew that he had been there. The joke caught on and was spread all over Europe and the South Pacific. Since Kilroy was marking the ships as they were being built, his mark would later be found chalked into completely inaccessible places, places where no graffiti artist could possibly have gone, like the inside of a hull. This, of course, fed the myth of this super GI who could go absolutely anywhere. There was nowhere Kilroy had not been, and nothing he could not do. As the war went on, the legend grew. The troops never knew who this mysterious Kilroy was. All they knew was that he had been there first. As a joke, or as a morale booster, they began placing the graffiti wherever they landed, claiming it was already there when they arrived. It became a challenge to place the logo in the most unlikely places. It has been found on the top of Mount Everest. It has been found on the wall surrounding Osama bin Laden's house. You will find it engraved in stone twice on the National War Memorial in Washington, D.C. And supposedly it was even found scrawled in the dust on the surface of the moon. Kilroy was here. When the big three Allied leaders were having their famous meeting in Potsdam in July of 1945, Truman, Attlee, and Stalin had exclusive use of a magnificent marble bathroom, strictly off limits to everyone else. On the second day of that summit, Stalin came running out of the bathroom in a rage, shouting, "Who is Kilroy?" Like those GIs, we too find a similar, familiar signature everywhere we look. Even in the most unusual places, the most remote spots we think we surely were the first to reach, the most impossible situations we get ourselves into, that uncanny and unmistakable logo is there. All around us is the sign that someone was here first. All around us is the signature of God. We may not know who God is, but all that we see tells us God was here first, tells us we are not alone. There is nowhere we can go, nothing we can experience where God has not already been. We reach the heights of joy and find the signature of God. We are plunged into the depths of sadness and find God there too. In the roar of the storm, in the stillness of the heart, everywhere is the familiar hand of God reaching over even the highest wall. As we pray in the comforting words of the psalm, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your right hand will guide me. Your hand will hold me fast." Our fathers were right. The enigmatic graffiti is written all over life. Kilroy was here. They saw it on the battlefields. They carved it in the rough spots. And they became Kilroy to one another, dispelling the myth that we are alone, dispelling the myth that we are the first, dispelling the myth that we are the greatest. Like that greatest generation, let us too see the writing all around us. Kilroy was here, and we know who he is.